Don't tell me what to do. The bike at this point was still dark blue and I kind of wanted something flashy, so I spray painted some of the smaller parts on the bike, like turn signal and speedo, fluorescent orange. To stick with the race look, I bought some brake lever guards. These are probably not guarding much because the casting is pretty cheap. But we don't need any of the clamping parts as they screw in right into the GTS handlebar. I also installed orange hand grips. They are slightly different orange, I might replace them. But installing them was fun, and this is what that looked like. After having good brakes, fresh tires, it is time to get good suspension. I'm starting this off with Klaus Studio Bushings. A couple people recommended these to me that stiffen up the bike quite well, so I thought I'd give it a go. I've put about 200 miles on the bike with stock suspension, and especially when I take an aggressive highway ramp or something along those lines, I wish it wouldn't be as spongy. So we got bushings for the front and bushings for the rear. I also picked up two different SIP shock plates for the top. One is 7mm lower and the other one is 17mm lower. I will start with this one, which is the 17mm lower version, which usually requires fender modification, but I don't have a fender. I'm gonna play with these when I get to the mountains and see the difference in handling compared to stock. Looking for shocks was quite tricky as I wanted to have rebound adjustability in the rear, so I ended up with the Racingbros Bazooka shocks. They sound funny. It's an air shock. It means I can adjust spring preload by changing pressure inside the shock through a Dunlop valve. It doesn't really have a spring, it is just a cylinder that's under pressure. On top here we're gonna mount our Klaus Studio polyurethane bushings, and then that little knob in the rear is to adjust my rebound. The engine side shock has a little extension for the air pressure valve, as it is harder to get to it, probably assuming that you have a stock airbox. They give you a little bracket to move that remote valve onto the motor and make it more accessible. As for the front, I kind of went all out. I got the Racingbros Bazooka 4.0. This is, to my understanding, their top of the line shock. It has adjustability in spring preload, rebound, compression at high and low speed. I will revisit the user manual when I get back to adjusting it in a future video. Here is the shock. It has a remote reservoir, and this is your knob to adjust high and low speed compression. On the side we got our rebound adjustment, our Dunlop valve for spring preload, and then the base is machined out of one piece of aluminum. On top we're gonna put our Klaus Studio mounts again and our lowered SIP top bracket. To start, I take the stock shock off. This is pretty easy as I don't run a fender, so everything is really accessible. To prepare the front shock, I grab the 17mm lowered SIP bracket and the Klaus bushings. So the bushings come with a top and bottom section of it. I did assembly, flat bushing at the bottom, washer, top plate, bushing, washer, lock washer, and then nut, which I was gonna tighten when it's in the bike, as I can do that because I don't have a fender. The bare bones look of this shock fits quite well with my bare bones look of the front end. I dig the look, and the front also sits a little lower, making the trail different of the front end. As for the rear, I started with the exhaust side shock first, pull it out, get rid of all the stock stuff, and then I put the new shock in with a bushing at the bottom, and then put a bushing on top and tighten it down as well. Same process goes for the engine side, with the only difference is the little bracket for the valve extension. It's a little shame that they are so well hidden underneath the body, but they certainly do look good. Now off camera I did change the brake caliper to a stage 6 one. I'm not sure what was going on with the one before, but it seemed like it had a little air leak. The brake performance wasn't quite where I want it to be. With all that done, this is what the bike looks like right now. So before the shocks, I've done about 200 miles on the bike so far, and I never really owned a GTS, so it was quite fun. I have since installed these two gauges here. Of course my key doesn't work here. Fiddle with it. One gauge shows oil temperature and the other one shows voltage, as well as an RPM gauge. Eventually I'm going to replace all this with an SIP speedo, but for now this is sufficient. Also, the glove box was completely messed up, so what I did, I just installed a choke knob that will pull on the lever, which opens the glove box door. There's no way of fixing it any other way. One of the first things I also did is change tires. I have put Kenda Quick KD1s on there. I haven't really had them hot enough to test them out, but they do certainly feel better than the OEM City Grip ones. So I gotta ride this bike, and I gotta ride it a lot, and then I gotta set up my shocks, and I also gotta record some footage for you, because this thing has been a head turner for sure. So let me get a GoPro ready and take you on a ride. Until then, don't forget to comment, subscribe, all that good stuff, and I'll see you then. Oh yeah, I installed underbody lights.